Hey, welcome to another Cinephile Studios vlog, and we're going to go through another Marvel TV show as the episodes premiere. Of course, now it's Loki. We had WandaVision, we had The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, now we have Loki. It's airing on Wednesdays. I actually didn't get to catch it till yesterday, and I waited until today to discuss it. I rewatched the episode again with my fiance. I had to watch it because I'd already seen a little bit of a spoiler out there, and I was like, I have Twitter off of my phone at the moment, very limited time on Facebook and on other social medias, and yet still saw a little spoiler. And I was like, I think I better just watch the episode because, based on this little tiny bit that I saw, I was like, this show's going to be jam-packed with so much information. So I made sure I just finally watched it and watched it again. And it was actually worth watching it twice. It's that good of a first episode. My favorite of the pilot episodes from the Marvel shows so far. So there will be spoilers in this video, as there always is in these vlogs. So just a warning, if you haven't seen it yet, please go watch it. Come back to the video. And if you want my initial thoughts, I love it. I seriously really think this is the best first episode that Marvel has done yet. And by far the most excitement that could possibly be created just from the initial episode. I'm hyped for what's next. More hyped than I ever was with the last two shows, both of which were very good and I was very into. But this one, I feel like, is opening way more doors than I've seen opened in the past. So, of course, the show focuses on Loki. It's actually taking place within a different universe, in a way. In Endgame, they went back to 2012 to New York, where the Avengers finale took place, and they had to get back one of the Infinity Stones, the Tesseract, the space gem. But in the process, Hulk decided to take the stairs, 2012 Hulk, and he ran into 2023 Tony Stark, which then caused the cube to be released from its suitcase. Loki took the chance to grab it and then disappear. So just because of that really quick, kind of funny scene, we have an entire TV show. So it takes place in that universe, and it features Loki, a character that I've had quite an interesting history with. I didn't initially like the villain. I wasn't part of the cult fan base that adored him, and it wasn't really until Thor Ragnarok that I got really into the character. Of course, he died in Infinity War, and I thought that was going to be it. I figured anybody who was dying in Infinity War that happened before the snap was probably out of the series for good. Now, for the most part, that hasn't turned out to be 100% true. I mean, Vision was in WandaVision. Loki now has his own TV show. But those versions of the characters are actually dead. What we're getting now are just different either universes or at least different realities of these characters. In the case of Loki, taking place right after his disappearance in Endgame, the 2012 Loki goes to the Gobi Desert, which he is then apprehended by the TVA. The TVA basically takes care of the timeline. This is something that we've seen a lot of glimpses of in the Marvel Universe so far. It was discussed briefly in Spider-Man Far From Home, only to be shown that it really wasn't the multiverse. It was just a diversion. Multiverse also happens to be in the title for the upcoming Doctor Strange movie, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. It was also slightly hinted at in WandaVision, but it didn't turn out to be the case. And there's also the What If TV show that is coming soon, which will focus on different versions or different realities of all the characters. But it hasn't been confirmed as an actual multiverse TV show. There's also been a lot of hype for the upcoming Spider-Man Homecoming sequel, Spider-Man No Way Home, where that movie will also be about the multiverse and will bring the Sony characters into it. And since Disney, when I say Sony characters, I mean the characters like Venom, Morbius, and the previous Spider-Man, like Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and my assumption is that maybe they'll even try to bring in the animated Into the Spider-Verse. But There's also the fact that Disney now owns the original X-Men films. They own Deadpool, which there's been a Deadpool 3 confirmed, and they also own the original Fantastic Four films. Not the Roger Corman one, the one that was never released, but the ones that were made by Tim Story in 2005 and 2007, and the remake in 2015. Or the reboot, I shouldn't call it a remake. It was its own thing, directed by Josh Trank. So there's been a lot of hype that a lot of those characters are actually going to be brought in, and are actually all different multiverses in the Marvel Universe. Marvel has confirmed so much by at least having the films offered on their streaming service, Disney+. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're all multiverses. So Loki is starting to kind of set that up a lot more than the other movies have. Because, like I said, Far From Home ended up kind of being a big joke. WandaVision hinted at it. They had, you know, Quicksilver in it, or at least the actor who played Quicksilver in the X-Men films, but it turned out to also be a boner joke, so who knows? It's possible that they might be trying to mess with us, because everybody's expecting it at this point, but if all the rumors for Spider-Man are to be true, and the fact that Doctor Strange literally has multiverse in the title, the Multiverse of Madness, one has to wonder that eventually they're going to have to introduce this crap. It must be noted also that Loki actually mentions madness in the multiverse. That's actually one of the sentences that's used by the little animation sequence used to describe what the TVA does. Anyway, I really dig the character of Loki now, after seeing him in Thor Ragnarok, and this version of the character is by far the best yet. I mean, I think a lot of fans of Loki have been waiting for something that focuses more on his character, and as someone who wasn't as in love with the character at first, but really enjoyed him as the movies went on, I am very happy to see Tom Hiddleston get his own take on the character, one where he gets to take the limelight. He gets to take the show as his own, develop the character, and the first episode really breaks him down right away. I wasn't expecting to get this much emotion and this much psychology in the first episode. This is usually something we only see in the later episodes. We've had a lot of emotion in the other Marvel Studios TV shows, but not quite to this degree right from the first episode. It's very good. Mobius, I'm going to screw that up, but Mobius, who's played by Owen Wilson, is basically there to break him down, to really figure out what makes Loki tick, as he says. They go through his history. They even have this little film reel that has his entire life on it. The TVA is a very interesting place. I'm not aware of it from the comic books. Like I've said in other vlogs that I've done in the past, my, knowledge of Marvel Comics basically stops after, like, the first phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. After that, it's all been pretty new to me. And now that they're bringing in the multiverse stuff, even though I'm aware of the multiverse, I'm going to be doing a lot of catching up with just watching the movies and not knowing where some of this comes from the comic books. But I had heard of the TVA in the past and what they do, but in the show, they're shown to be a much stronger force than anything we've ever seen in the Marvel Cinematic world. At this point, the most powerful thing ever, like was Thanos, for instance. That was probably the most powerful being we've seen yet. There's certainly maybe other more powerful beings out there, but as someone who could actually wield all the Infinity Stones, and the Infinity Stones themselves being very powerful, that's about the max that we've seen so far. And this episode, in a very, how do I say it? In a very kind of, it's an amusing way that they do it, but also, I'm trying to find a symbolic way, that's the term. A very symbolic way of showing that the Infinity Saga has ended. The first three phases were one complete story, and now we are moving on to something different. Maybe not something bigger, but definitely a different kind of power. Fact of the matter is, Loki in this episode is going through the TVA offices, which is basically set up like, this kind of 70s aesthetic of what you would expect an office to look like. I almost kind of wonder if the TVA was created by people who happened to live around the time in the 70s and was established during that time. And sure, they can hop through all different timelines, but because the actual aesthetic of the offices was created in the 70s. I kind of wonder that. It could just be a tribute, but it's almost kind of interesting if that would be something that plays into it later. Maybe the space wizards, when they finally decided to create this, happened to be living in the age of the 70s. I don't know. Maybe they got a person from the 70s to be their interior decorator, but it is heavily influenced by the aesthetics of home decor from the 70s, and I love it a lot. So anyway, when he's digging through the offices, he's trying to find the Tesseract again. He's been arrested. They're not letting him escape. You can't even really comprehend how you escape from this place. People are allowed to travel freely. I mean, at one point, Mobius is in the 1500s. The finale takes place, the finale of the episode anyway, takes place in Oklahoma during the 1800s. They're all over the place, and they're allowed to be. Time in the TVA does move in a linear fashion, as far as we know, but it only works for them in that specific place. They're still allowed to travel in any kind of direction on the timeline that they want, and as for watching the timeline, they're just watching for any divergences. Loki happens to be a divergence. He basically was told he did something he wasn't supposed to do. What's funny about that is, it made me wonder, as far as what happened in Endgame, why the heroes were allowed to go back in time, take the stones, and leave. I was also under the impression that if you go back in time and take the stones, regardless of returning them or not, which they can return them as Captain America did, I figured that that created new universes. But as, you know, I'm going to forget her name now, Sorcerer Supreme from Doctor Strange explained, if you take a stone out, it's going to create a new pathway. So I guess that's the only reason why there'd be new divergences in the timeline. It also makes me wonder if she knew more about the TVA than what was originally known up until now. Maybe she actually knew what the TVA was back in Doctor Strange. She kind of explains it in the same way that the TVA is explaining it. But my only impression after watching Endgame was that regardless of taking the stones or not, you're still creating alternate branched realities. But it looks like the only branch reality that actually happened was Loki, because he decided to take that stone, and that wasn't supposed to happen. As they explain in the show, the heroes going back in time, all of that stuff, even though they were messing with the timeline, since the three space wizards decided that that was meant to happen, it was supposed to happen. Loki escaping was not supposed to happen. So there's kind of a lot of interesting, you know, almost like you gotta kind of, it's a weird spiritual or godlike notion you have to deal with. Like, who exactly is deciding your life, and are you really deciding your life? And Loki in a lot of ways is told no, they already know everything he's ever going to do, and he's not deciding anything, which really messes with his perception of reality. He's going through existential crises right from the beginning, even when he's walking through the first 3 elevators, which, by the way, I thought that was a hilarious gag, the fact that he walks into an elevator and it goes down like an elevator, but there's actually not an elevator. It still has elevator doors, but he's just falling through. But once he gets to the end, they got to test to see if he's a robot. If he is a robot, he gets disintegrated, but he's told that a lot of people who are robots don't know they're robots. And he's like, well, I'm not a robot. And then he stops and he's like, but what if I am a robot and I don't know? It's kind of a weird existential crisis, but it really sets you up for what comes later. Once he finds the Infinity Stones, it screws with him even more, because he's trying to find the Tesseract, which he finds out doesn't work. None of that stuff works in the TVA. The magic doesn't work. You almost got to wonder, if you put superheroes in there like Captain Marvel, would their powers even work? But he tries to use the Tesseract, isn't allowed to. And he also finds in a drawer that it's full of stones. As he's told by one of the office workers, yeah, we have a lot of those. I thought that was one of the best scenes that I've seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, honestly. It was really messing with Loki's perception of reality. And he had realized that after all these thousands of years of knowing what the Infinity Stones were, and even wielding them at different times, and, you know, probably wanting to use them to acquire power, in that moment he realized that, wow, it's almost like he learned that all of it was a lie, and he realizes the TVA may have even more power than what those Infinity Stones have to offer. I thought it was interesting, too, that they had a bunch of Infinity Stones, especially a lot of Time Stones, which kind of makes sense. You got to wonder if there's, like, a lot of Sorcerer Supremes in the past who have maybe used that Time Stone for their own devices, and if possibly, it's been stolen so many times, because that's one of the only stones that actually remains on Earth, and, you know, Earth beings are kind of the weakest. Who knows? I'm just kind of spitballing there, but basically they have a lot of stones from all the different branch realities that have happened. In the drawer, it seems like they have mostly the green stones, but they got some other different colored ones in there too. But it's interesting to note that they don't have too many soul stones, at least from what I saw. I don't know if I even really saw any, but if I did, I think I only saw like one orange stone in there, which makes sense since the soul stone is kind of the hardest one to get. But anyway, it challenges him, and he realizes the TVA might actually have more power than he's ever seen in his life. And he starts to trust the idea of being at the TVA and what it can do for him. Then he goes through the reels of his own life. He starts to see events in Thor the Dark World and in Thor Ragnarok, and especially Infinity War where he dies. He gets to see those playing, you know, and he gets to see them actually happen. Things that haven't happened to him, but all the audiences know about. What's interesting about it, too, is the fact that we never get to see Loki actually react the way that he does. This is the first time we've ever actually seen him get kind of sad about something. You know, it's actually breaking his heart watching some of these scenes play out. And I guess it's kind of an idea that you don't get to see a lot. You don't get to see a lot of, like, characters interact in the moment and then see them reflect on it later, especially not in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I really appreciate it for doing that. And, you know, the shows so far have been very good at doing that. Taking the characters, having them actually reflect on the tragic things that have happened to them. And in Loki's case, it's very directly happening to him. I mean, he died, and he actually saw it happen. Something that hasn't happened to him, but the audience has. It's a very interesting concept. Towards the end, we find out there's actually another Loki out there. Not too many details are shown about it. We don't know too much, but we know that there's just a variant of him out there that's causing havoc. And, you know, supposedly, and we have to think, is destroying the sacred timeline and trying to create a multiverse of madness, possibly. I'm starting to wonder, given how WandaVision kind of messed with people's expectations and wasn't quite what we thought it was going to be, I'm wondering if everything is actually starting to build towards what Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is gonna be about, and how it's actually gonna set up the next couple phases, or maybe at least phase 4. How things are gonna get so wild and crazy. And I'm wondering if everything's just building on top of each other. The fact that Scarlet Witch kind of took a villainous turn in WandaVision, and now we have this show where it's starting to show that, you know, there is a sacred timeline. We need to protect it. Loki's going to help. But also, there's another Loki out there that's already caused havoc. He's another variant. I have to wonder if possibly that variant is actually just the future version of this Loki that's just been freed. And maybe the TVA doesn't know that. Maybe teaming up with him isn't a good idea. And you got to wonder if him causing havoc is going to cause, you know, so much havoc that it's going to be too late. There will be a multiverse of madness, and then Doctor Strange will have to take it down while also trying to take down Scarlet Witch, who's only making things worse. So I'm starting to see, and, you know, that's the thing. I'm starting to theorize again. I'm starting to kind of picture where things are going, trying to figure out where things might come into play later. But it makes me curious. I don't know if I really trust Owen Wilson's character from the start. You got to kind of wonder with a guy like that why he wants to team up with Loki so badly. I don't know if I trust Loki for his kind of emotional turn, because I think he was also very enthralled with the power that the TVA has versus what he's had in the regular world. So, like I said, overall, very good first episode. Very good aesthetic. Very, you know, it's just very good looking, big budget TV show. Has that good old Loki charm and humor, and also very good music. I haven't gotten to see any of the music actually released on Apple, you know, on iTunes or on Spotify yet, or even YouTube. I looked up the composer. It was Natalie Holt. From what I've seen, I can't find any other music that she's done in the past, but this is some really great stuff, and I'm looking forward to what's coming next. It's a great setup. It's a great setup that gets me excited for what's next. And given that WandaVision also kind of had a very loopy premise that I don't think ended up playing out as well as it should have, and, you know, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier kind of brought things down to basics. I'm excited for Loki to do something a little crazier again and maybe actually have it play out. People have been clamoring for the Spider-Man trailer as well, and I kind of wonder now if they're maybe going to hold off releasing that trailer until Loki's done, because given of what we've heard as far as rumors of that movie goes, and the fact that Doctor Strange is in it, and, you know, he's also going to be in this movie called Multiverse of Madness, and that Disney owns X-Men now, and there was an X-Men, kinda, in WandaVision, and WandaVision kind of purposely threw us off, as well as Far From Home throwing us off. I feel like they are building towards something, and I think they're just messing with us at this point. But I don't think Loki's messing with us. Of course, I could be tricked again, but given how straightforward this first episode was, with what the premise was, and what they're setting up, I have high hopes. I mean, you have to look into the fact, too, that this screenwriter wrote this show, and without even airing one episode, they hired them back to do a second season. And the fact that they also have this person writing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. They obviously think this show is very, very good, and they trust what the creators are doing with it. So, I'm looking forward to what's next. Sorry this one was so long.